the defense was the number one thing in this game on the list of bad. And I'll start there. Too many points, too many yards, too many third down conversions, 3 in a row on that final drive when they just needed one stop to get the ball back. The Falcons, again, I really believe yesterday going into it, I talked about it all week long, they were going to face a much different Atlanta team than the team that they saw on film against the Panthers. The Falcons were the perfect, bettors setup, trap opportunity to play really well and to win. They were really good. And they've got a superstar running back. They've got a very talented tight end. They've got a true number one wide receiver. They've got a pretty decent offensive line. They've got some defensive players that can really play. I love 55. I love Caden Ellis. I like the rookie, the kid from Georgia that they took in the first round, Walker Max. He's good. But look, all of that said, the defense was nowhere near good enough to win a game like that, unless you have Superman on the other side of the ball, and he was not available. The tackling, I'll start there. It just was atrocious yesterday. Far too many missed tackles. This was an emphasis for this team. And, we go back to week 1 when they tackled so well against the Giants. And I remember, we did a call segment and we said, what, did we take away from week 1 that we think will kind of hold up, throughout the course of the season? And I said tackling, because typically if you can tackle in week 1, you're going to end up being a good tackling team. Well, they're not a great tackling team right now. They certainly weren't yesterday. I do think that this is not an issue of players not playing with urgency, with the kind of, level of competitiveness and urgency that Quinn preaches. They're just not getting people to the ground. And look, Bijan Robinson does that to everybody. If you've paid attention to other teams, including the Falcons, he is truly a superstar running back. And he makes people miss all the time in the tightest of spaces. He really does. But, Reeves had an opportunity on that ridiculous 14-yard touchdown run by Bijan. Algier must have broken himself 4 or 5 tackles in this game. They'll have, somebody will have the advanced numbers or, just the missed tackle number somewhere, but there were too many missed tackles yesterday. The defense has had moments of tackling well in the first 4 games and some other moments that have not been very good. Yesterday was not good at all. They gave up way too many explosive plays, way too many chunk plays, 69-yard swing pass out of the backfield to Robinson. Hey, I got an idea. Let's not let Bobby Wagner cover as much anymore. I remember saying the same thing about London Fletcher towards the end of his career. He's so good at so many things. But the thing towards the end of Fletcher's career, and you're starting to see it with Wagner, is don't put him in coverage that much against really good backs and tight ends. It is their liability. It's a liability to the team. That 69-yard chunk play, a 43-yard pass to London, 26 and 22-yard passes to Pitts, a 20-yarder to number 82, Washington, multiple runs of 10 yards or plus, a couple of 14 yards or plus. Too many explosives defensively allowed. You give up too many explosives, often it's because of the tackling. So the two go hand in hand. Also, it goes hand in hand with coverage. Guys, coverage is the biggest issue defensively through 4 games. I can't tell you specifically what it is. I know many of you are convinced that Lattimore can't play. I'm not saying you're wrong, okay? And I don't think he had a good day yesterday. You know who else didn't have a good day? If Lattimore didn't have a good day, I don't think Trey Amos had a good day yesterday either. I'm not sure anybody had a great day in coverage. But my point is, I don't know how much of it is scheme play calling versus players and execution. I don't. If you're about to tell me that, well, they shouldn't be in man the whole time, they shouldn't follow those motions in man. They played a lot of zone yesterday. They played a lot of man from what I could see. They blitzed. They didn't blitz. They zone blitzed. They didn't zone blitz. they're trying a lot of different things. I just don't know if they're the right things. We can sit there and we can watch the games on Sunday and we can see people wide open. We can see Bijan in the slot not even covered on a 3rd and 4. And we can say, well, that something's wrong. But to just say it's a player thing, I think is selling the situation short. I don't know how much of it is players and execution versus scheme and play calling. I would guess, just like most situations, there's his side, her side, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And I would bet that is the case here as well. But the bottom line is it's not good enough. Okay? You can't match up, once again, Wagner in coverage over and over again on really good backs and or tight ends. Lattimore cannot be in a situation where they are motioning him and he's not able to play press. Sandra still, I said last week, maybe they need to move him to the outside. And they pull, maybe Lattimore and put Noah I back in, as the nickelback, as the slot. Maybe that's coming. I don't know. Sanders still hasn't had a good season. He did have a pick yesterday. I don't know how much credit you give him for that pick. It was a terrible throw, but he had dropped into that area, which made it a tougher throw in that zone. But coverage is the issue right now because pass rush isn't the issue. There have been times, and there were times last year, it's like not enough pass pressure. Although overall for the season, it wasn't bad. Coverage was an issue. They're getting some decent pass rush this year. Coverage is a problem. Yesterday, 3rd down defense. I mean, come on, man. 6 out of 12 and 3 straight on that final drive when they desperately needed a stop. I don't know what they would have done down 7 with the ball. If Jaden had been in the game, I would have guaranteed they would have gone down there and scored. But the way they had played their last few drives, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see him get the ball back down 7. You had the first 3rd and 4 was the scramble by Penix. You had the 3rd and 6, which was Pitts wide open, even after Quan Martin held him for 22 yards. And then that 3rd and 7 was a gut punch at the Washington 37. It's a good throw. It's a great catch by London. Lattimore's on the coverage there again. And it's a shame because they would have trotted out their kicker for a 55-yarder, more likely than not, had that been incomplete. And today's 55-yarder is yesterday's 45-yarder, but maybe you get the ball back down 7. 3 straight 3rd down conversions. By the way, after that 3rd and 7 to London, it's still the ball's at the 28-yard line. You still have a shot there. Maybe if you can get off the field and force a missed field goal. How many blocked field goals have we seen? But Tyler Algier breaks about 19 tackles and rumbles for 19 yards down to the 8-9 yard line, something like that. Game basically over. The run defense has been better this year. It was not good yesterday. I'll be honest with you. I was shocked at the end of the game that Atlanta had only rushed for in the game 128 yards. Bijan had 17 for 75. I kind of felt like he was on his way to like 150 plus with the way the game started. 4.4 yards per carry is, it's not Krosky Merritt's 5.9 for the season. Bijan is special. He's elite. It was not I don't care what the numbers say. It was not a good day against the run. Their worst day against the run this year. And one of my keys going in was you've got to stop the run and you can't let them be balanced. You can't let them be balanced. And they were. I think their first 36 plays, they put this graphic up, 18 passes, 18 runs. So, the defense wasn't good yesterday. It's been very, very, very premature to discuss this defense after any one of these 4 games as anything definitive yet. The 2 good performances, and I would even say really good performances, were against teams that were hurting and not very good offensively at home. The 2 bad performances were against much better offensive teams on the road. I do think the talent's better, especially up front. I think that the secondary, while everyone was raving about it over the summer, Terry wasn't even in camp for them to cover. You just don't know with things like that until you start playing real games. They have given up, I mentioned this in the open, in their 2 losses, 61 points and 839 yards. That is not great improvement from last year's defense. Long way to go. 13 games left. Again, I think Kinlaw's an upgrade over John Allen by a long shot. I think that they've got, a better overall defensive front. I think their pass rush has been effective. But it's still not a good defense. I don't care what the traditional or even advanced numbers say. It was too small of a sample size through the first 3 games. This will start to, after yesterday, reflect something that's probably more true to what they are. Next thing on the list of things that I didn't like today. Number 2 for me is Cliff Kingsbury's play calling. I say this every time I do this because Sonny Jurgensen for years said, stop doing the, you think the play calling was bad. But when you've got 2 of your backs going 14 for 106 and 7.5 yards per carry. As a team, 22 for 147, 6.7 yards per carry. I think that's all that you really need to say, why 33 called pass plays? If you count, by the way, penalties, sacks, and scramble, why 33 called pass plays and 20 called run plays? Why? Like, they weren't behind so much throughout the entire game that they had to desperately down 21-0 start throwing the football. It was, 10-7. It was 17-10. It was 17-13. It was 24-16. Now by the time they got the ball back to 31-24, understood, or 34-24 when they got the ball back down, 34-24, you got to throw there. I just, and sometimes that'll skew some of the numbers. I just didn't love it. I felt kind of like I did it in the Green Bay game, in that you were having a major problem defensively. And then yesterday, there wasn't an issue with pass protection or throwing the football like there was in the Green Bay game. But with the play count and the time of possession kind of doubled up in the first half, I think you wanted to come back and do something a little bit more time consuming. If you go to the first play of the second half, okay, Bill's in the game. He rips off a 16-yard first down run. They go tempo and they take a deep shot to Lane, which was caught, by the way, but holding on Sinnott. So before you know it, it's 1st and 20. And then after an offensive PI on McCaffrey, it's 1st and 30. They amazingly, overcame the 1st and 30. That was where Mariota on 3rd and 14 scrambled for 22 yards. But you really weren't getting stopped. And by the way, Krusky Merritt and Rodriguez are 2 of your better players, 2 of your better skill position players. I'd like to see in the next 4 games, Krusky Merritt's got 29 carries in 4 games. I'd like to see double that in the next 4. And I understand, I said this earlier, that they have some concerns, I'm sure, with his inexperience, especially as a pass protector. Coach him up. You got to have him on the field. If the same issue exists with Rodriguez, coach him up. You need those guys on the field more. You need them carrying the ball more. I think it's a decent run blocking offensive line with the way they've, structured it the last 2 weeks. They didn't go heavy jumbo as much, I don't think, as last week. I'd have to look at the snap count for Trent Scott. They started the game that way. Find the snap count for Trent Scott. I'm going to bet it's not what it was last week. Last week, he was in for about a third of the plays.
Looking right now, Nikki just posted them.
Trent Scott, nine snaps in the game out of 57. So, yeah, a lot less of the jumbo 6th offensive lineman in the game than last week, even though they started the game that way. I don't know. To me, they should have been able to run the football. They were bigger than Atlanta was up front. What did you say? I'm sorry, Max.
9 snaps, 16%.
Yeah. So I think that they could have gone to the run more. I felt that way against Green Bay, but Bates was lost, and they felt like they weren't going to be successful doing that. And maybe they would have been right. But here's what's indisputable. The two running backs yesterday were averaging a ridiculous 7.5 yards per carry. And these weren't, draws at the end of the first half from your own 20 running the clock out where somebody goes for 30. Okay. These were, first down, second down runs. On the list of things that I didn't like, there were a lot of fumbles in the game, but none of them were lost. Amazingly, Lane muffed 2 punts at the end of the first half. Debo fumbled and recovered it. So they got lucky, that they didn't lose one of those. Atlanta fumbled too. Bijan fumbled on that knockout by Payne, and which, by the way, saved them 4 points because it was 2nd and 1, and it went to 3rd and 7, and they got the stop, one of the, few times that they got a stop on 3rd down, and they forced a field goal. So that was a big play. And then on a punt by Tress Way near the end of the first half, that ball knocked off one of the Atlanta players, legs, shins, and that was loose for a while. But Lane, 2 muffed punts. That was disappointing because he had not really done that. We had that issue, remember, last year with Zacchaeus a little bit back on punts. So 2 more things on the list of things that I didn't like. So the first is very nitpicky, but I just thought Quinn should have been more aggressive at the end of the first half. Now, when they took over from their own 8-yard line, I would have been fine with him being conservative there. But they got to the 33 in a few plays, and then on a 2nd and 10, they ran McNichols and let the clock run. The ball's at the 35-yard line, the 2nd and 10 run. Come on, man. You got out to the 33 pretty quickly. Let's go for it. This has been his MO. And you've got a quarterback that, for the most part, is making some good decisions and some good throws. I understand you're limited in your offense, of array of weapons. But you covered some 25 yards of ground pretty quickly, and then you dialed it back. I think, he might say when we got to 2nd and 10 after the first incompletion, we wanted to run the clock. That 2-yard run wasn't intended to be a 2-yard run. We thought we could get 7 or 8, and then we would have gone faster with the ball at the 40-yard line. But once we did that and we were faced with 3rd and 8, they weren't calling a timeout, which was a mistake on their part. We just wanted to go into the, locker room down 7, knowing we would get the ball first to start the second half. I understand that thinking, but man, I don't know. He's always been an err on the side of being aggressive. And we've now had, I think, 2 occasions at the end of halves where they've been, uncharacteristically conservative. Then last on the list, they did not need to kick that field goal at the end down 34-24 when they kicked it. Okay. Most of you understand this, and I know a lot of you don't. It's not your thing. You don't follow all this stuff, but down 34-24 with no timeouts left, you need, obviously, a field goal and a touchdown, right? You're going to have to recover an onside kick, regardless of what the next score is. You'd much rather the next score be a field goal with, 30 seconds or so left in the game, 25 seconds or so left in the game, giving you a legitimate chance to get in field goal range. They had moved the ball up and down the field in the 4th quarter, and they were moving the ball up and down the field again. And for some reason, they clocked it when they reached the Atlanta 24, and they sent Matt Gay out there with 1:29 left. And the purpose of that is, look, if we're going to need a touchdown, we want the most amount of time if we do recover the onside kick. I understand that. But you were in touchdown scoring range. You were 4 yards away from the red zone, and you had them on their heels. I would have gone another 40 seconds, another 5, 6, 7, 8 snaps in the game. Although with the clock running, if it's inbounds, it's going to be far fewer, understood. But call it 3 or 4 snaps, offensive snaps, trying to score a touchdown before I would have sent the field goal kicker out there. you really, when you're down, when you're down 9, 10, or 11 in a game, late in a game, there's so many different scenarios, but basically, if you're in that situation where you have no timeouts and you're below the 2-minute warning and you're going to have to recover an onside kick, if you've got an opportunity to get the touchdown first, which they did based on the context, which was they had moved the ball down the field in the previous drive and the drive prior to that, and there they were moving it down the field again, and they had a minute 30 left. A minute 30. No, don't kick there. Go get the touchdown. Spend at least another 45 seconds trying to get the touchdown. How many plays is that? It depends on how many plays are inbounds versus out of bounds, completed versus incompleted, penalties versus no penalties. It was just, there are times where you want that kicker out there. Like if you've got less than 3 timeouts left, okay, less than 3, and you're before the 2-minute warning, and you can get a kickoff before the 2-minute warning, forcing them to run a play before the 2-minute warning on offense, giving you a third timeout, you do it there. You certainly do it with 30 seconds or 25 seconds left down 10 so that you ensure you've got time left if you recover an onside kick to at least get into range for a Hail Mary or a touchdown. I would not have kicked with a minute 29 left. It was far too early.